Hello, everyone. I am pleased to present the work of Group 4. We're the group on Canvas with the skyscraper picture. I think this picture reflects the diversity of our workplaces and our interviewees' workplaces. The workplaces range from higher education institutions to multinational corporations. Likewise, all three of our interviewees provided adult learning in various settings. Our group topic is similarities and differences, how the adult educator views the adult learner. The starting lineup for our group members is Crystal Bass, Mary Howe, and Antwinett Lee. We each interviewed an adult educator who was responsible for supporting adult learning in their institution. The interviewees were from Perry Technical Institute in Yakima, Boeing in Seattle, and the University of Washington, Bothell campus. The next three slides will briefly summarize each interviewee's primary responsibilities and how they each supported adult learning. The interviewee from Perry Technical Institute is an adult educator who works primarily with adults from the military and recent high school graduates. They support adult learning by engaging students with their learning through open dialogue. The interviewee from Boeing is the lead curriculum designer for the technical skills in Boeing. Their responsibilities include job analysis, development, design of course materials, and evaluations. They also delegate design work to other team members. The interviewee from University of Washington, Bothell is an associate professor at UWB full-time. Their responsibilities include teaching, research, scholarship, service, and academic committee work. They support adult learning by educating nursing students who are studying for their bachelor's or master's degree in nursing. Our group used 12 interview questions to address our topic, similarities and differences, how the adult educator views the adult learner. Some of the questions were, from your perspective, what are the characteristics of adult learners? Do you utilize one of the traditional 5 orientations to learning, such as behaviorist, humanist, cognitivist, social cognitive, or constructivist? Another question was, what are some common challenges for adult learners in your environment? Some of the emerging patterns that we discovered throughout our interviews were that older students with children were having a difficult time balancing school, work, and family responsibilities. Many of them were working night shifts, which was common, and they had challenges with math requirements and lab report writing, as well as writing papers and understanding how to critically read assignments. English as a second language was another challenge that some felt were societal in nature. There were retirees who were coming back to work that did not have technology skills. And there was a variance in the company's orientation to learning. Some unexpected responses, and quite surprising, were that learners' informal education was not recognized or utilized to design or deliver instruction. Also, military students were actively recruited in one of the organizations, and also instructors that possessed subject matter expertise didn't always have the training skills to deliver that training. When it came to confirmation, contradictions, and alignment around our assumptions, and also the theory and research based on our readings and classroom discussions, we could see that one of our assumptions was that the interviewees would have a constructivist orientation. However, this was not the case. One was constructivist, while the other two were cognitivist and behaviorist. Looking at learning styles and preferences, Miriam, Caparelli, and Baumgardner noted it's important to remember that learning style instruments are best used as tools to create awareness that learners differ and as a starting points for individual learners' continued investigation of themselves as learners. However, in none of the institutions that we interviewed were assessment tools used to assess new hires for their learning styles or preferences, or for any of the other adult learners. For orientational learning, as stated earlier, out of those 5 orientational learning, 3 were represented: cognitivists, behaviorists, and constructivists. Looking at instructional models, we could see that Grove's stage self-directed learning model outlines how teachers can help students become more self-directed in their learning. For example, in the foundational skills training, the learners start as dependent learners and they progress through as a skill advisor tells them what to do, all the way to being interested in learner, involved learner, and finally self-directed as they get ready for the assembly. Looking at self-directed learning, Knowles surmised that adults are naturally self-directing, but the rate at which they move towards self-directedness varies. Also, in some situations, adults may need to be temporarily dependent. This certainly applied to the foundational skills course, where new employees were found to be very dependent. Potential implications for adult learners based on readings and group discussions were lifelong learning, meaning making, universal design for learning, self-directed learning, transformational learning, and access to technology. The next several slides are findings and conclusions from our interviews. These are institution demographics for Perry Technical Institute. As you can see, they offer 9 programs from automotive technology to welding technology. In 2011, their graduation rate was 86%. Our second institution is Boeing. Boeing is the manufacturer of commercial jetliners for more than 40 years. They employ about 162,290 employees. They're quite competitive and they offer the most complete family of freighters, and about 90% of the world's cargo is carried on board Boeing planes. Our third institution was the University of Washington, Bothell. Their head count as of fall 2014 was 4,963 students, with an undergraduate population of 4,406 and a graduate population of 557 students. Gender breakdown, 51% female, 49% male. And they had the most diverse age range of students from 17 to 36 and above. This slide encompasses a combination of demographics for adult learners across the 3 institutions we interviewed. It also points out the similarities and differences we noted after analyzing and comparing our 3 interviews. Some of the similarities were demographics represent a wide spectrum across adult learners. People of color and people with disabilities were represented at each institution. Some differences were some of the institutions had a higher percentage of males versus females, and the age range varied from one institution to the next. Some characteristics of adult learners in the institutions of our interviewees were recent graduates after the age of 22. Many were obsessed with grades. Many had a renewed curiosity about the discipline and were rediscovering success in school and rediscovering new interests in school after a long hiatus of not being in school. Similarities were most of the learners were internally motivated, and a difference was that learning characteristics differed across our institutions. Educational philosophies were in alignment with their orientations to learning. For example, the constructivists believed in co-creation of knowledge with the learner. And a similarity was that there was an emphasis on new ways of learning things. One of the differences that we found were that approaches differed, but the ultimate goals were in alignment with their orientations, and they all were invested in the learner. Here are some examples of how our interviewees assessed learning needs of their populations. Some assessed them in terms of those they had already taught before, informally. Some used dialogue one-on-one with their students and asked their knowledge about a specific area. And depending on their response, they would learn what their weaknesses and strengths were and tailor that to the content. Similarities, 2 of the 3 valued assessment of learning needs and used different approaches, where some didn't assess learning needs at all. Common challenges for adult learners across all of our interviews were time management and writing assignments. Some of the differences were in technology skills, that were dependent upon the generation of the learner. When it came to the 5 orientations to learning, there were no similarities in our interviewees' orientations to learning, and the learning environments, as I mentioned earlier, were quite different. One of our 12 interview questions looked at the impact of learners' informal education on the learner, and it was very surprising to hear one of our interviewees say that the learner's informal education had no impact on how their course was designed. They further elaborated that due to competing demands of teaching, service, and scholarship, that most faculty had to do a lot of their planning on their own time, which was a major barrier for those adult educators. The learner's success was measured through grades, films, discussion boards, grading assignments, and the similarities was there was always an emphasis on grades, and testing was conducted in a variety of ways. Some of the differences is that some of them measured learning through social media and film, and these were used for assignments. Many issues were identified for diverse learners, some being that many of the companies struggled with the diversity of the learners. Language was a common barrier, and that the generational gap was more prevalent in one of the institutions, and that older learners who were returning after a long hiatus had trouble negotiating the university system and working with computer systems, and difficulty knowing how to read and interpret instructor assignments, as well as managing their own anxiety with being in school after a long period of not being in school. Common barriers across our interviews were time management, time management, time management, and understanding the learner's role. The other thing is that a difference between our interviews was that barriers varied from finances to the quality of instruction to preference for technology. Technology utilization was a common thread throughout all of our interviewees' institutions. They felt it was essential for learning, and they use it in a variety of ways, from web-based training to paint simulators to teach employees how to paint. A difference was that the technology was used differently based on the learner's needs. These are our resources for our interview project. This concludes our presentation. We are looking forward to seeing you online and moderating our group session. Thank you.